Tonight we celebrate 30 years of a programme that was nearly called Florizel Street, but changed its title to Coronation Street a month before it went on the air, because people thought that Florizel wouldn't exactly be a switch-on. I think they were probably right. It gives me considerable pleasure to introduce tonight's lecture, because in the autumn of 1959, two young directors shared the responsibility with their bosses for casting all the characters of the street. One of those young directors was a chap called Derek Bennett, and the other was me. Everything was fitting together well, with one exception. We couldn't find the right character to play Ina Sharples, and we were told that if we didn't get on with it and find the right actress, then the character was going to be dumped. That was an alarming threat, because we thought Ina Sharples was crucially important, as everyone knows ever since, an absolutely essential ingredient. As Crisis Day approached, we found 6 actresses to audition, one after the other on a closed circuit within Granada, so that our bosses could take the final decision. And as the time for that audition arrived, Derek and I whispered to each other that the outlook was gloomy. We'd each rehearsed 3 actresses, and neither of us was frankly optimistic. As things turned out, Vi Carson was absolutely brilliant. Derek and I were totally astonished, because she had played a totally different character to the one that she had rehearsed. We went down to the studios, we congratulated her, we asked her how and why she dumped the Ina that she had rehearsed. And her reply was, "Well," she said, "I thought I'd do it my way. I've been Wilfred Pickle's pianist all my life, and I only want the job for 6 weeks if I get it anyway." Well, as we all know, Vi Carson's 6 weeks turned into 20 glorious years of acting. The street itself is still going strong after 30 years of continuous success. Last year in the House of Commons, during a fairly impassioned debate on the Broadcasting Bill, the Right Honourable Member for Birmingham Sparkbrook made the following declaration. He said, "I would not be a party to any bill passed by this House which puts Coronation Street in jeopardy." And then he also added, "About EastEnders I make no such assurance, but Coronation Street is sacrosanct." In the comfort that we have such defenders, I think we can look forward to another 30 years of Coronation Street. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome the MP for Birmingham Sparkbrook, the Right Honourable Roy Hattersley.
Viewers who have settled down in the hope of hearing a complicated analysis of subtexts, symbolism and social significance will be well advised, in almost the immortal words of Lenny Bruce, to switch off. No doubt, somewhere in the world beyond Weatherfield, a PhD student is even now completing a thesis entitled Kenneth Barlow, a Paradigm of the Psychological Problems Caused by Failure in a Mobile Society. But that sort of approach is not for me, tonight or ever. I propose simply to describe why I try to be in front of a television set at 7:30 on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Now, that's not to suggest that Coronation Street has no social significance. It's a chronicle of our times, and future historians will find no better way of learning about the way we live now. It's recorded the changes in society and the changes in social values which have taken place during the last 30 years. When the series started, the 60s had barely begun to swing. The writers of that era, having established that Elsie Tanner was, in a word, no better than she ought to be, chose never to be very explicit about what Elsie Tanner did, or had done, to destroy her reputation. But whatever it was, there's no doubt that Ina Sharples disapproved of it.
Well, sit down. Rather wear your chair up than your carpet. My word. You do look a bit under the weather. Is it just the worst for wear? You've got no makeup on. Go about. That's the first time I've ever seen your skin.
Mrs. Sharples, if there's no point to come to, will you kindly get through the door and leave me alone?
I've had your Alan Howard round pouring his heart out.
He's not my Alan Howard.
Well, it strikes me you've got your work cut out to convince him he isn't.
Because he's encased in solid conceit, that's why. Because it protects him from things he'd rather not hear or believe.
Well, it sounded to me more like concern than conceit. There's a bit of conceit on his side, but there's a bit of pride on your side and all, isn't there?
Why Why did he come to you, Mrs. Sharples?
Because he wanted
I'll tell you why. Because he knew that within minutes you'd be round here telling me all about it.
All about what?
Oh, I don't know.
And does it matter?
It matters to me that he gets out of my life. I'm sick to the back teeth in the very mention of his name. Now, I didn't invite you round here, Mrs. Sharples. I'll be very grateful if you find the door for yourself.
All right. You know, it must be about 25 years since I watched you flouncing up the street in that blue satin tent coat. Do you remember it? You were always the first to be with it round here by far, with your pointed brows and your pagoda shoulders. I used to watch you through the vestry window.
I wouldn't call it watching, Mrs. Sharples, sitting there with a light out, peeping through your lace curtains.
And I'll tell you what was the rod and staff that comforted me. I used to say to myself, there'll come a day when that young madam will turn into a lonely woman with no past to remember. If you think back, you used to do the same thing night after night. In fact, I never thought you'd have any future to look forward to.
And what were you, Mrs. Sharples? Jealous or just vicious?
Bit of both, I think.
Well, I've no regrets. I'm very sorry, but there's no soul to save.
Well, that day's arrived, hasn't it?
Are you having a gloat, Mrs. Sharples, or have you come here to tell me something?
What I'm trying to say is the future doesn't look so rosy when you're on your own.
Oh, no lectures on loneliness, please.
You don't know what loneliness is.
It's something you come to terms with.
Yes, well, I've got 30 years' start on you, lass, and believe you me, one never comes to terms with loneliness. If there was ever a fella in love with you, it's that one.
If ever there was a woman not in love with him, it's this one. I won't say thank you for calling, Mrs. Sharples, but I'd be very grateful if you closed the front door after you.
Now, half the street fails the Ina Sharples respectability test, and only Ivy Brennan expresses disapproval. And Ivy, as we know well, is less concerned about the impropriety of Martin and Gail's unmarried state than she is about continued access to her grandchildren. Her complaint isn't that Martin and Gail live in sin, it's that Martin lives at all. It would have been quite different back in 1960. It's easy to imagine what Martha Longhurst would have said to Minnie Caldwell about Deirdre Barlow's carryings-on. And Annie Walker would have treated Alma Sedgwick with a disdain which is only right and proper when the president of the Lady Licensed Victuallers Association comes face to face with an attached but unmarried woman. There are fewer Pharisees in Coronation Street than once there were. That is because there are fewer Pharisees in life. But I repeat, we're not going to discuss Coronation Street as a social document. We're going to celebrate the pleasure that it provides. Coronation Street is a pretension-free zone. That is one of its strengths. The spirit in which I speak of it tonight is the spirit in which I watch it. 3 times a week, I say at about 8 o'clock, bloody good, wasn't it? I intend to suggest some of the reasons why that is so. Part of the joy of Coronation Street, one of the reasons why it attracts such affection and has been at the top of the ratings for so long is its technical excellence. It is superbly written and superlatively acted. Those are, I know, extravagant claims to make, and I propose in a moment to justify them with illustrations. But it's not technical excellence alone which makes Coronation Street unique. It is special, especially attractive, and especially popular because of the virtues and the values which it portrays and celebrates. First and foremost, it's the story of ordinary people, and it demonstrates the abiding truth that ordinary people often live extraordinary lives. It proves that the real emotions, love and hate, hope and despair, fear, compassion and understanding, are more likely to be found in the house next door than in a Texan oil company skyscraper. Coronation Street is the antithesis of escapism. It is essentially the story with embellishments, but the story nevertheless of the people who watch it. It's not, of course, a wholly accurate picture of life. If it were, there'd be no point in paying the license fee. We could save the money and spend our early evenings looking through our neighbours' windows. But Coronation Street is a reflection of real life. When we watch it, we see ourselves in a mirror, which often enlarges and exaggerates, sometimes distorts, but rarely creates a totally false image. If you can't identify with Coronation Street, you are either profoundly insensitive or simply peculiar. We all know anxious Alf Roberts, possessive Ivy Brennans, incorrigible Jack Duckworths, and infuriatingly indomitable Kevin Websters. At least we believe that we know such people as we watch the programme. It may be a brief illusion, but it is part of Coronation Street's unique appeal. We recognise them as real because, like our friends and neighbours, they are complicated characters. Mike Baldwin, for all his expensive leather jackets, double whiskies and vulgar boasting, knows himself to be second-rate. He's driven on not by the hope of success, but by the fear of failure. Percy Sugden, on the other hand, is completely at peace with the world. He grumbles, he complains, he denounces deteriorating standards of behaviour, but life suits him because he enjoys being disgruntled.
Mrs. Brennan's brought you some homemade cakes. Now, isn't that kind?
Yes, it is, but I'm not eating any sweet things, not putting weight on while I'm forced to be sedentary. You know, it wouldn't be any good for me.
But they're only very small cakes.
I've always been trim in my life, and I intend going into my coffin the same way.
You know what you need, don't you, Mr. Sugden? You need to get out and get some fresh air in your lungs. I mean, have you given this thing an airing yet?
No, and I'm not going to either. I'm not a cripple, you know.
But that's exactly what you are. I mean, if only temporary, you know, I mean, there's no shame in it.
Well, that's what I keep telling him.
You see old men in them things with a rug round their knees and no teeth. You see 'em in park, feeding the ducks and dribbling down their chins.
Yes, all the same, I think it'd be better than lying there dwelling on things, you know. I mean, you're not the only one with problems, Mr. Sugden.
Oh, I could have... Did you?
It is because it deals with real characters and real emotions that the story is at its strongest when it takes place locally, certainly in Weatherfield, preferably in the street itself, and best of all in the Rover's Return. The idea of a meeting place in which characters can be assembled to perform the writer's will is not new, as William Shakespeare would testify. So we mustn't complain about recent, or should I say Queen Victorian, imitations. The device of building the action around conversation in the bar, or using that conversation to comment on the action in the manner of a chorus, worked particularly well in this series, which thrives on the feeling that the audience might well drop in for a pint. Scenes set in the close, but never closed community, work far better than those which carry the characters into unaccustomed territory, either to hear Rita Fairclough sing in a Blackpool nightclub, or see Steve MacDonald hitch a lift home from the Lake District. What is best about Coronation Street certainly travels, but like the best wine, it travels most successfully in its own bottle. Now, I'm not so besotted with the programme that I believe that it's always compulsively convincing viewing. It is at its least compelling when it deals with incidents which are outside the audience's experience. The murders, whether a dramatic convenience to shake up the plot, or a contractual necessity to prove that no actor is indispensable, were not a success. Even in these desperate days, such things do not happen round our corner. Coronation Street is at its best when we believe that we might have taken part in the plot. And I've no doubt how real it is to millions of viewers. When Bill Roach, playing himself, made a visit to a recent parliamentary by-election, the voters who lined the pavements in hundreds to see him pass by shouted, "Go back home to Deirdre." And in that by-election, there was a record swing against Bill's candidate. Was it, I wonder, the penalty that that poor man had to suffer for being supported by the adulterous Ken Barlow? I had a similar experience myself in August when I spoke on this same subject at the Edinburgh Television Festival. I was complimentary about Alma Sedgwick. Indeed, in a moment of madness, I compared one episode in her life with an incident in Anna Karenina. 2 weeks later, the Daily Mirror telephoned me. Alma, they said, was extremely worried about the Gulf crisis. Could I get her a ticket for the emergency debate in the House of Commons? Would I meet her outside the House? They would gladly pay for the subsequent lunch. It was several minutes before I had the presence of mind to say, Alma doesn't exist. It is, I think, worth noting that nobody has ever propositioned me on behalf of Anna Karenina. Now, in the line between fact and fiction, it is blurred, and the blurring is one of the strengths of Coronation Street that comes about because of the basic truth of the programme. It is true to the sort of people it portrays. The neighbours, if you'll excuse the expression, instinctively help each other. The Rovers organised a funeral collection for the most hated man in the area when they heard he was going to a pauper's grave. When Liz MacDonald found out the whereabouts of her runaway son, she barely hesitated before asking if you could borrow Rita Fairclough's motor car, even though the women were acquaintances rather than friends. And Rita did not hesitate at all before agreeing to lend Liz the car. Most significant of all, when Derek Wilson asks if such spontaneous generosity is wise, he is treated to a lecturette which is as warm-hearted in content as it is abrasive in style. That is the quintessential Coronation Street. In Coronation Street, families rally around, lend a hand, and sink or swim together.
Well, are you sure there's naught I can do before I go?
No, thanks. Alf's coming round this morning to sort everything out.
Well, let's be off then. If there is out you need, you know where I am.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Oh, lovey. I did it for my sake as much as yours. I think I would have gone spare if I hadn't had somebody to talk to.
Thanks anyway.
I'll go. It's time I was gone anyway. Well, she's packing up. I think that's the way for it. Go on, you know.
It's only me.
Hello, Emily.
How are you feeling this morning?
What am I supposed to say to that?
I didn't mean to sound insensitive.
Oh, no, of course you didn't. I'm sorry. It's just that I've had quite a few visitors this morning. They all keep asking how I feel. As if I've got measles or something. And I keep having to say I'm fine, thanks, under the circumstances. What I really feel like doing is screaming from the rooftops, and I feel as if I've lost an arm and a leg. There's no tomorrow anymore. The whole world's collapsed. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Emily. I just had to get that off my chest. I know folk mean well, but trying to make out that they feel worse than I do is no help to me, believe me.
Oh, I know. I lost Ernest very suddenly in tragic circumstances as well, you know.
Oh, of course you did.
I'm not going to even start to tell you how it felt at the time, because I couldn't. But what I can tell you is, it is true what they say. Time is a great healer. You look around, it's surprising how many memories of your life together you have. Little things that remind you every day. You learn to live with them. You remember the good things. The good times.
Oh, Emily. Oh, I'm glad you came. I am honest. Do you know, you're the first person that's actually talked about a future.
Well, if there's anything I can do, I shouldn't think I'm the first to say that.
No, you're not. But I'll remember it. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everybody. famous name sale starts on Wednesday, so hurry before all the bargains have gone.
For quality furniture, come to Reed's. They don't just design it, they make it and sell it direct to you. Fiendishly clever, eh? At Reed's, you choose the look you like. For quality, choice, friendly service and value for money, you won't beat Reed's. There's a massive range to choose from, and right now the Reed's sale is on with unbelievable bargains. I could go on all night, but listen to this.
From a factory floor, direct to your door.
Not bad, but it won't beat the floral dance.
Thomas Cook are offering up to £260 off next summer's holidays. So it won't cost you a fortune to bear all.
Fresh and fruity, Aston Martini. Celebrate the taste.
So I just got back from vacation, 2 weeks at the Holsten Pils Brewery in Hamburg. Oh, what a flight back. I was on one of those planes that goes faster than the speed of sound. I asked for Holsten Pils. Stewardess never heard a thing. I had to get my friend to order for me. He had more luck. He's an anatomical linguist. He speaks body language. But you know how I enjoy traveling. Every time I cross a time zone, I hang around for an hour and try to catch myself arriving. One time I didn't turn up, I was worried sick. Still, as my linguist friend would say,
There is, of course, angst in Coronation Street, as there is angst in life. It's often supplied by Ken Barlow, the Flying Dutchman of Weatherfield, condemned to walk its streets for all eternity. But usually the characters come down on the side of hope and happiness. And when a choice has to be made between the decent reaction and the ignoble response, Coronation Street puts itself firmly on the side of the angels. Alec Gilroy, at the end of one of his more spectacular rows with Bet, visited the public house where the lady licensee is an old friend. She offers him comfort, perhaps even consolation. See how Alec reacts.
Hello, Alec.
Marge?
Is this a social call or what?
Not entirely.
No, I thought it might not be.
I hear Bet's working here.
Well, she was.
Was?
Not any longer, I'm afraid. She not told you?
No. No, we're not communicating very much these days.
Separated, I believe.
Yes.
Can I get you a drink, Alec? From the house, of course.
I'll have a small Irish. Did she say why she was leaving?
Not really, no. It was me that said why she was leaving. Which was basically that she seemed to have forgotten she wasn't a landlady any longer, but just an employee. Paid to do what she was told and keep her opinions to herself.
You mean you sacked her?
I'm afraid I did, yes. And quite frankly, Alec, you have my sympathy. I didn't have to put up with her for very long, so I can imagine some of what it must have been like for you.
Can you?
Of course, she was a single woman for a long time. I suppose she come to expect certain freedoms, had she?
You know what you are, Marge? You're a nasty-minded, two-faced gossip.
Hey!
And I'm only grateful that Bet isn't working for you. Here, there's the money for the drink.
You can't talk to me like that.
And don't you ever flatter yourself that you could possibly imagine what my marriage was like, because it was wonderful, if you must know. The most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me.
Now, not every long-running series would have ended the scene in that way. But Coronation Street is a family show in a very special meaning of that term. It is the story of a community which behaves like a family, sometimes arguing, as all families do, but usually rallying round when the family itself is threatened. It is a family which from time to time rises up and demands respect for even its humblest members. Many of you will sympathise with Curly Watts as he attempts to improve the quality of life in his lodgings at Shea Duckworth. But cast your mind back to the Ogdens, who also in their time took in paying guests. I ask you, wholly rhetorically, for I know the answer, how would you have enjoyed your bacon and eggs if Stan Ogden had been visible above the cornflake packets on the other side of the table? Similarly, watching Hilda put the curlers in her hair is not everyone's idea of a romantic evening. In fact, the Ogdens were exactly the couple which most of us would not want to live next door. Yet Hilda had the capacity constantly to excite our sympathy, even when she was in the wrong.
If you don't mind, Mrs. Walker, I'd like a word with you.
I'll be with you in a minute, Mrs. Elton.
In a minute won't do, Mrs. Walker. I want to know where my money is.
I don't think this is either the time or the place to discuss your emoluments.
Oh, don't go chucking your big words at me. I eat them for breakfast. I want my money, what you owe me.
I do not owe you any money, Mrs. Elton.
There was 3 quid short in that envelope, and you know it.
Mrs. Elton, if you want to go on bawling like a fishwife...
I want my money, what you owe me.
Realise that you do so at the risk of your employment here.
Oh, aye, so she tells me. Yeah, so she tells me. 2 days off and it's my cards, isn't it? I can't be ill, can I? Oh, no, never been heard of.
Don't look exactly at death's door to me. In fact, you look very robust and you sound it.
Yeah, well, I've dragged myself here today. Dragged myself, because I won't be done down.
Your husband came in this morning? Well, really, this afternoon?
Yes, I sent him as a favour.
As a favour? Too many favours like that and I'd be out of business. He went out of his way to upset and offend the customers, and he smeared the tables, smeared them with a floor cloth. I couldn't allow him to continue.
Yeah, well, he's not accustomed to the job, is he?
Exactly. And therefore he is not entitled to the rate of pay for the job.
Well, he only needs a bit of telling.
We might describe you as a professional cleaner.
I am a professional cleaner.
Well, if you are, then your husband is an amateur, and not a particularly gifted one at that.
Oh, no, he's a professional. He's a window cleaner. In fact, we're a family of professional cleaners, which puts us higher up in godliness than some folk I could name.
Does it? Well, then, you might ask the very godly Mr. Ogden where the other pound is, because you should only be £2 short. And £2 short, you are going to stay.
Right.
For 30 years, Coronation Street has had the self-confidence to realise that there is a place in television for the tender virtues. During those years, some television success has been achieved by elevating the brutal, the selfish, the ugly, and the downright nasty into hero status. Coronation Street has never needed to rely on such squalid expedients. Let's examine why. First, it has maintained an extraordinary quality of acting, a quality that makes unsympathetic characters rounded people, believable, interesting, and therefore deserving of at least our compassion. I confess that Ken and Deirdre Barlow are not the sort of couple with whom I would choose to go on holiday. Indeed, whenever I see them, I think of Lord Macaulay talking about the Carlyles. It was good of God to make Thomas and Jerry marry each other, thus making 2 people unhappy instead of 4. But I felt for them in their moment of anguish simply because the acting inspired compassion.
You've been with her, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Of course you have. Well, what have you decided?
decided?
About what's been happening. Oh, don't tell me you and Wendy have spent most of the day together and not discussed it.
She's as confused about the situation as I am.
I'm not talking about her.
Deirdre, it's not easy. These things take time.
I've already given you more than enough time. I told you earlier, Ken, no sharing. It's her or me. Right. If you haven't got the guts to make a decision, I'll make one for you. I want you out. What? Just pack your bags and go.
Now?
Yes.
Deirdre, you're being selfish.
Me selfish?
Yes, have you thought about Tracy? Force me out and she's going to ask why.
Tracy already knows everything there is to know about you and that Crozier woman.
What? You told her?
I didn't have to. She worked it out for herself. So just get out, will you? Go!
I felt exactly the same about Leonard Swindley, left at the altar by Emily Bishop, née Nugent, 20 years ago. Mr. Swindley, the draper mad with love, was a ridiculous figure. Emily was clearly right to dump him. We would have all told her to do exactly the same thing. But if you have tears, prepare to shed them now.
Come in. It's open. Hello, Mr. Swindley.
Hello.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, no. No, please don't upset yourself.
It was the only thing.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
It's a terrible thing to do to anyone.
No, no, no. Whatever you think is right.
Thought it was fated at first. My father couldn't come to give me away, and then my brother, the telegram. I began to think we just weren't fated. But we knew, didn't we?
I thought it might give us security, companionship, a measure of happiness.
It's not enough, is it?
No.
You wouldn't have been happy, would you?
I wanted to do
You wouldn't have been happy, though.
I'm not a young man, set in my habits. One grows introspective. It isn't easy to change.
I wouldn't have been happy either, you see.
No.
Things can't be the same now, can they? The shop and everything.
In time, perhaps. As far as I'm concerned, everything will be the same.
I've made such a fool of you. Well, both of us. Will you cancel the honeymoon and the co-op hall?
Yes, yes, in a moment. Look, will you be all right?
You do look nice in your suit. Really distinguished. Piece of cotton.
That's a very beautiful dress. I don't think I've ever seen you
It's
look
got a bit crumpled now. It did look nice before. There isn't anything else to say, is there?
See you in the shop, Miss Nugent.
Business as usual.
Yes. Business as usual. Goodbye.
Of course, sophisticates amongst you will dismiss all that as sentimentalism. But it's sentimentalism in a good cause. It's also high-class sentimentalism. Indeed, it's what gets sentimentalism a good name. In Coronation Street, the quality of acting is both supported by and dependent upon the quality of writing. The dialogue is convincingly realistic. The pace is constantly maintained. And in the tradition of their high-quality serial, Dickens, Trollope, Wilkie Collins, each episode ends with an irresistible invitation, suspense, shock, catastrophe or triumph, an invitation to switch on again when the saga continues.
Who's Mr. Dozy then? Making his mam late.
Excuse me, has anybody seen Elsie?
Jenny, come on, everyone, come out! There's a train through the viaduct! Come on! Somebody! 999, please, tell them!
Fred, we're moving!
Put the handbrake on!
I've got it!
The handbrake, pull it up! Pull it!
I am doing!
Pull it harder!
I can't!
Pull it harder!
Come on, mate. Come on.
He's gone! He would have run me over!
Get an ambulance! Get an ambulance! Please.
It's sale time at Vogue. Inspect the impressive craftsmanship of Aircall.
If it's in Vogue, it's in Vogue.
Matthias Rosé, delicious, but not as delicious as the dashing, but tiny Sir Edward. He pulled his bronze body close to hers. She quivered. His skin glistened like a million tiny bubbles dancing in a glass. He looked into her smouldering eyes and said, Rosé, oh Rosé, Rosé.
Quality motor oils. In tests, most cats said their engines preferred them.
Hey, Santa, have you heard about Lumpolly's January sale? There's up to £150 off per person.
£150 each? Get away.
Good night.
Good night, Lucy.
You're supposed to be in New York.
I didn't like the coffee.
Golden roasted, richer, smoother, Nescafe Gold Blend.
I thought you might have joined me in New York.
Whatever gave you that idea?
Yes.
Off like a shot this morning. Boss had the day off. Girl in accounts came back. Nice weather for ducks. United won. Away. Pint of dry blackthorn, please.
Definitely a dry blackthorn day.
Coronation Street is rarely a caricature. Were it to satirise the sort of people on whom its characters are based, it would lose one of its essential strengths. Coronation Street never patronises its audience. There's no suspicion of clever television people laughing at their viewers, laughing at the way in which they can be entertained with the second rate. laughing at their funny working-class ways, or laughing at their inability to realise that the joke is on them. What we see is respect for the standards and values of Coronation Street families. It's demonstrated in the scrupulous observation of conversation, and its reproduction with only the changes which are necessary to make it engrossing television dialogue. It's the sort of conversation which we hear in our daily lives, but it's not so like our daily conversation that it's boring. Listen to another storm in the turbulent marriage of Alec and Bet Gilroy. Alec is anxious to renew his relationship with his long-lost daughter. Bet says it will all end in tears. Alec insists that they accept his son-in-law's invitation to a party in leafy Cheshire.
Next door's at home. Let me take your coat. Ah, thanks. We don't stand on ceremony on this house. I won't introduce you all round. The people will soon tell you who they are. Thank you. And you're not shy anyway, are you, Alex? Me? Oh, no. Ah, no. Here's somebody you should meet, a local vicar. Andrew? This is Santa's father, Alex Gilroy, and his lady. This is Andrew and Marion Crabb. Lovely to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'll get you something to drink. Oh, Victoria, here's your grandfather.
Ah, Victoria. Vicky, I've brought your grandma to meet you. Well, your step-grandma, really.
Hello,
love. Where's your mother got to?
I don't know. She was here a minute ago.
Oh, well, I've got a little present and a card for her here. I'll just put them down.
Well, she can't be far away. I'll get you that drink. Victoria, why don't you get your grandpa and Bet something to eat?
A word, sunshine. Don't describe me as anybody's grandma, okay? Or step-grandma, all right?
Why not?
Just don't. Hey, and your son-in-law keeps calling you Alex.
Well, that's all right. It's nearly right.
Nearly right is not good enough, as he will find out if he tries to call me Bert.
Now, don't stop.
I don't care whose son-in-law he is.
Sandwiches.
Oh, lovely.
Isn't this nice?
Lovely.
The groaning platter.
I certainly don't claim that that's the best piece of writing ever to have appeared in Coronation Street. It may not even be on the shortlist. Indeed, I've avoided making an invidious choice by providing an example of one of the constant elements in the writing's excellence, the meticulous attention to detail. No doubt you all noticed, before Bet pointed it out, the final humiliation. Alec's son-in-law cannot even get his name right. He calls him Alex, the middle-class diminutive for Alexander. It's one of those moments when you want to laugh and cry at the same time. Often we watch Coronation Street without having to resolve that basic dilemma. We simply laugh. For Coronation Street is a continually funny and genuinely funny program. The Roberts, the Duckworths and the Wiltons are all marriages in the classic comic tradition, sustained by mutual irritation. I don't compare Percy Sugden and Phyllis Pierce to Beatrice and Benedict or Kate and Petruchio, but they are direct descendants of Beagle Bumble and Widow Corney and Mr. and Mrs., that is to say, Madame Mantilini. One of the qualities that makes Coronation Street unique amongst the long-running serials, is its capacity to make the viewer laugh intentionally. And the comedy gives an extra continual dimension and makes it closer to life than any of the serials that dare not risk life's funny side. The word risk is carefully chosen. Mixing humour with grief is a dangerous dramatic business, but Coronation Street dares and wins.
You were very naive, Mavis.
Pardon?
Said you were very naive.
Naive? I don't...
Inviting Victor up here, whatever the reason.
Well, it was done in all innocence, Derek. Honestly, it was.
That's exactly it, Mavis. You are an innocent abroad.
Am I?
The wiles, the subterfuges, the appetites of men like Victor Pendlebury. They're a foreign language to you.
Well, I wouldn't quite say
I can
that.
see that now, having considered the facts of the matter very carefully. I see that you were indeed the innocent party.
Oh, I was, Derek, I was.
I bet it never for one moment occurred to you, did it? What was in that man's mind?
He said he just wanted to cure my headache.
And you believed him, implicitly.
Of course I did.
That says it all, Mavis. Says it all. You know, I really think we ought to wrap you in pink cotton wool. You're too delicate, too innocent a creature to be allowed to roam at will in this nasty, brutish world.
Oh, Derek.
But there is one criticism I must make. One stricture I must level at you, Mavis.
Oh.
You have a lot in common with Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe?
You are not aware of the power of your sexuality, Mavis. Over lonely, pathetic creatures like Victor Pendlebury. So if you just remember that in future. A smile, a twinkle in your blue eyes.
Oh, greyish blue.
And passions are aroused, Mavis. All right?
Yes, Derek.
Good.
Is that it?
Is that what?
The end of the matter.
I must just see Victor Pendlebury tomorrow and tell him what to do with his job, and then I think we can put it all behind us. You know, I quite like a nice cup of cocoa, and perhaps one of your fairy cakes.
Derek,
Yes, maybe?
did you mean it when you called me a Jezebel?
You are a Jezebel, Mavis, definitely. Albeit unwittingly.
I've taken my examples, the extract which we've seen, from each of Coronation Street's 3 decades. And I believe that they've demonstrated that after 30 years, it's just as good as it was during the golden age of its invention. My affection for the show is certainly not shrouded in northern working-class mist. If Coronation Street's appeal were limited to viewers with a nostalgia for cloth caps, whippets, chrysanthemum shows, and the days when you could buy 4 of chips and still get change from 6pence, it would not boast an audience of more than 50 million people, 2 million more than its most popular rival. One of Coronation Street's strengths is the way in which it has moved with the times. When Ina Sharples sat in the snug, public houses like the Rover's Return really had snugs, and old ladies in long black coats and cloche hats really drank bottled beer behind frosted glass doors. Coronation Street now reflects the complicated class and racial structure which characterises British society. In 1960, like thousands of other streets, it was white and wholly working class. Then the Khans, though clearly and intentionally not typical of the Asian British, came into the story. They were a sign of the real times. So were the hideous new houses opposite Rover's Return. And so, I fear, is Delic Wilton, an example of that most pathetic casualty of the acquisitive society, the failed yuppie. So is the gradual fading away of war memories. Once upon a time, Albert Tatlock fought in the trenches and wore his medals on Armistice Day. Percy Sugden boasts of his exploits between 1939 and 45. Both to young people, whom he does not quite realise, think of Montgomery and Alexander in history, alongside Wellington and Marlborough. But ex-Sergeant MacDonald talks of his service in the language of a different sort of soldier, manoeuvres in Germany and short tours in Northern Ireland. The cabin has moved to new premises, though I'm not sure if Mavis allows the sale of girly magazines. And Alf's mini-market is threatened by a supermarket. Indeed, one of my objections to the complete removal of all restrictions on Sunday training is the final nail that it would drive into Alf Roberts' commercial coffin. And Coronation Street is no more about the north than it is about the past. It is set in the north, but that does not mean that it only reflects northern mores and only depicts northern values. To suggest that because it takes place in Lancashire, its real attraction is what George Orwell called the cult of northernness is just about as sensible as arguing that Hamlet's real appeal is only to Scandinavians. 60 years ago, E.M. Forster said that the Seven Pillars of Wisdom was about the Arab uprising of 1916 in the same way that Moby Dick was about catching whales. What he meant was that Herman Melville simply chose the claustrophobic whaling ship as the perfect framework for a story about obsession. And T. Lawrence wrote about the war in the desert as an ideal background to his account of heroism and betrayal. I don't want to take the comparison too far. I simply say that Weatherfield, the street, the pub, form the perfect framework for a story about ordinary people who live extraordinary lives. Coronation Street takes place on those locations, but it is not only about them. Coronation Street is about life.
And don't forget that life goes on further up the street in Brookside Close on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays at 8 o'clock here on Channel 4.